Holly.
So I wasn't actually going to review this movie because I kind of called it a little late, and I actually didn't know much about it. I knew it had been compared to It Follows, and that's kind of it. And I knew it had done pretty well on the box office and stuff, and a lot of people liked it, but I really didn't know the plot. And I kind of watched this movie not intending to review it, but after watching it, I did think I would give my views, because although I haven't actually watched any other reviews of this podcast, I didn't want to kind of spoil my thoughts on it. I feel maybe I didn't like this movie as much as a lot of other people. We are talking about Smile, and this is the kind of the Halloween hit of 2022. And this one directed and written by Parker Finn and stars Sosie Bacon, who you may or may not know is the daughter of Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick. You've also got a support girl from Jessie T. Usher, who you may know from TV's The Boys. Now, the brief plot synopsis here, and this is going to be a spoiler review because this is a little later. It's going to be a spoiler review. There seems to be some type of demonic entity which is attaching itself to people through the act of suicide. And it ultimately somewhat possesses someone, kind of toys with them for a few days, up to a week. All the meanwhile, no one else can kind of see it. And ultimately, when it wants to jump to a new host, the existing host body essentially has to kind of, it makes it commit suicide in a ghastly way, traumatizing the new victim, and then kind of goes on to it, etc., and passes it along. Cut to our kind of protagonist of this movie, this kind of female doctor played by Bacon, and she ultimately is some type of doctor that specialises in kind of mental health issues, and she has a patient which, you know, we learn that has been kind of affected with this kind of curse, so to speak, and ultimately creates, you know, a situation where she commits suicide and it's passed along to this doctor, who initially thinks it's kind of her breaking down because she's had a traumatic past, but ultimately realising it is some type of supernatural curse, and what can she do to get rid of it? Okay, so, yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of this movie. I don't think it's a bad film. Before I get into maybe what I did not like, I will say there's a few things that I did like. There are a couple of good jump scares in this movie that kind of got me, I will say. This movie does rely on jump scares quite a bit, which we'll come on to again. But there are a few good ones, I feel, that do work and were quite effective. The acting is solid. I don't think it's, you know, amazing necessarily, but I think the acting is solid at least, giving you kind of somewhat kind of believable characters who you can believe in their kind of roles. I thought that was all pretty good. There is some kind of reasonable effects work here. The creepy kind of smile aesthetic I have an issue with, but I did think it was kind of somewhat kind of creepy. And there are more overt kind of horror things that I kind of liked as the kind of, you know, as in a visual medium at least. I mean, story-wise, I'm not sure it made a lot of sense, but visually it was interesting to kind of look at. Through the movie, particularly kind of towards the end, and it does remind you of other kind of movies as well. I thought this movie was quite well paced. You know, it kind of it does kind of feel formulaic and like it's kind of running off a template, but because of that, the pacing is kind of quite good. On a technical level, I think this movie is proficiently made. The production value looks good. You know, it's well shot. I think the sound editing is very good. The lighting, the cinematography, to a good standard. I like the fact that Jessie T. Usher's character, he is set up to be the douchey kind of boyfriend, but they don't actually kind of go there. They make him fight against our main character, but without kind of making, you know, without making him seem unreasonable, which I kind of thought was quite good. But at the same time, giving our our main character a kind of alternative love interest, so to speak. So all that was actually kind of quite well kind of handled. But let me come on to what I think doesn't work. Because this movie, to me, although like I said, I think it's perfectly watchable. It's perfectly kind of like a run-of-the-mill horror film. This, to me, smacks of a generic by-committee horror film. As I mentioned, it feels like it's running off a pre-established template. Now, I'd heard this movie compared to It Follows, but I didn't realise how closely it is a similar film. It kind of feels like It Follows with a few kind of tweaks and changes, but ultimately, the way this kind of cursed, demonic entity attached itself, kind of going from one person to the next and kind of making this, you know, person having to do kind of like things to try and escape it. You know, this is going to be a spoiler room. I don't want to spell it out necessarily. Yeah, it just seemed very derivative of It Follows. And then just that kind of the way this movie is portrayed. There's three bits that happen in the movie. The typical kind of like, oh, we think we're going to get away to kind of defeat it, but oh no, there's the typical kind of FU moment at the end, and we kind of know that, you know, ultimately it's a futile gesture. It's just kind of it's just losing. You know, it's just the standard kind of template for a horror film. I always take the piss of romantic comedies because they always follow the same template. You know, the romantic comedy, two mismatched people. You know, with the woman's normally got some type of weird thing, like she's clumsy or something. They're an unlikely couple and they meet, and it's all wonderful. But then they fall out, and then they kind of get back together at the end. That's a template for every single, you know, romantic comedy movie. But this is kind of feels like it's the basic template of a kind of Hollywood-produced horror film. It follows all the kind of rules. As I've mentioned, jump scares, I think it kind of relies a little bit too heavily on them. The actual... Now, this is maybe where some people may disagree. I feel more than most. The actual conceit of having this smile thing, to me, didn't really make sense. Aesthetically, it looks creepy, but what purpose did it serve? Why does this demon, or whatever it is, because it's never really explained, which in itself I don't have a problem with, it's a mystery thing, we don't know what it is, that's fine. But why, what's the point of the smiling? It's not anything to do with the actual kind of how it's like, the suicide kind of way that it kind of pushes people. It doesn't really make any sense outside of, that'll be a cool visual. That's it. You know, that'll look creepy. But in the context of a narrative, I didn't really feel like it had much to do with anything. And the actual fact as well, when we see it on screen, I didn't really feel it was that prevalent in the movie as well. I mean, it's not like there's like loads of people going around with these weird smiles. And even how this thing works as well, and we're told that it's invisible to other people. And it appears as, you know, like it's invisible, like no one else can see it. And we do see that happen within the movie. But there's a times, for example, she's in a hospital and there's like a male patient, mentally ill man, and it seems to possess him and make him smile. And I thought, well, he's actually there. And we see people kind of like, you know, orderlies come in and tackle this guy. So he clearly is there. He's not like a manifestation. He's not like a hallucination or something. He is there. So I was like, the rules of this doesn't really make sense, because I feel on one hand it's telling you that this entity presents itself to its victim as a kind of hallucination to try and mess with them or whatever. But then we see it kind of actually possess people and kind of make them smile, and it's like, why is it making him smile but he's not actually kind of possessed with it? I don't know. To me the rules were kind of a little bit fast and loose with this particular kind of movie. The other thing as well is I felt because our main character is a doctor specialising in mental health, although she's initially kind of like, you know, puts it down to kind of mental health issues, I felt she kind of went into, oh, it's a curse a little bit too easily. because even when presented with, you know, realistic hallucinations and things like this and other people telling you, I think you, as a medical professional in that field, she surely would have kind of just put it down to that she's kind of losing it, especially because she's had a traumatic experience in her life. And I thought that maybe what this movie was going to do was present it like we don't really know whether she's losing it or there's really a kind of a, you know, some type of entity or whatever. So I thought that was a little bit of a waste of an opportunity there, to be honest with you. The ending aesthetics with this kind of, when we see this kind of creature appear more in a kind of horrific form, looked cool, but it's a visual thing that we have seen before. So to me, I didn't really feel this movie has any type of originality outside of, I mean, it's even been other movies that are dealing with kind of like smiling killers. The actual story beats themselves I thought were super generic and kind of, it was really kind of riffing off It Follows. I didn't think the actual kind of idea behind this curse was particularly kind of really worked. It just seemed to be, the rules of it were kind of like whatever the script needed to happen ultimately. So to me, you know, it's kind of, it's an entertaining movie. I think it's well made and there's some good horror elements, but it feels super lazy. I can't say this movie is a good film. The best I can say, it's an average film. So to me, it's a 5 out of 10. It's watchable, it's enjoyable, but to me, it's very much just leaning on its kind of laurels here and just doing the kind of like cookie cutter horror thing that we've seen a bunch of times before. But look, this time they're smiling. Great. So it's alright, it's entertaining, but to me it was just a kind of carbon copy of a million other kind of horror films that I've seen before. What did you think of it? Am I kind of maybe the lone voice of dissatisfaction with this movie? It's a 5 out of 10. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.